Hey, Chris here, and today I'm going to teach you the signs that you can look at to tell you if the no contact rule is working. But first, if you're new to this process and you're wanting to get your ex back, I would always recommend that you stop by our website and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a simple 2-minute quiz designed to help you understand if this is worth your time or even if you have a chance of getting your ex back. Taking the quiz is super simple. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video. You click on that and it will take you right to where you can take the quiz. So with that in mind, take the quiz again. Let's begin.
So, how do you tell if the no contact rule is working? One of the most popular questions that I get time and time again as I'm going through our private Facebook group, as I'm working with clients, as I'm talking to people who have purchased any product from me, basically, they always want to know some type of reinforcement to make sure that they're really doing the no contact rule for the right reasons. They want to make sure that when they do the no contact rule, it's going to work. Okay, so first things first, before I actually start listing out signs, and there are 5 signs that I'm going to show you today that really can sort of gauge how well the no contact rule is working for you, I want to first explain why the no contact rule works. You see, in my opinion, a lot of people out there are trying to explain something they don't fully understand. It seems like common sense that if you ignore someone, they'll probably try to get your attention in some way, shape, or form, right? That seems like common sense, but what I would like to explore with you is the why. Why? What processes happen to actually make that kind of reaction come about? So, if you didn't already know, the no contact rule really works on something called the theory of reactance. Now, this is going to get really technical and may confuse some people, so what I'm going to do is kind of bring it down to earth so that we can kind of talk in a language that all of us really understand and it's not confusing. So the theory of reactance really basically states that human beings have certain behavioral freedoms. We have the behavior to walk from one room to the other. We have the behavior to talk to someone and not talk to someone, right? So the theory of reactance basically states that when any human being's behavioral freedoms are interrupted or taken away, that person is going to fight tooth and nail to get that freedom back. They're going to react. So the no contact rule is basically a version of the theory of reactance, where you're basically taking one of your ex's behavioral freedoms away. The behavioral freedom of talking to you, of conversing, of being in contact. And you're banking on the fact that the theory of reactance will cause your ex to have this reaction towards you. The other cool thing about the no contact rule, and this isn't in the notes here, but I've found that the no contact rule works really best when you actually use it for the theory of reactance, but also use it as some sort of time period where you're able to cultivate your life, where you're able to improve the areas of your life that you really aren't happy with, so that by the end of your period, you are coming out of this much stronger, much more confident. Now, with that being said, let's try to figure out if the no contact rule is working. What are some of the signs that we need to be watching out for? Well, the first and pretty much basic sign is, number 1, they're trying to get a hold of you. This plays into the reactance idea I just told you about, where you're ignoring someone and they're trying to get a hold of you and trying to get that behavioral freedom back. So one of the best ways to determine if the no contact rule is working is that they try to get a hold of you. Your ex will try to message you, call you, talk to your friends, talk to your family, anything they can to get a hold of you, basically. This doesn't always happen, though. This is the interesting thing. I find really exes are kind of 50-50, right? Some exes will do this. They'll try to contact your parents, your friends, your family, you, leave voicemails. They'll do that. And then some are stubborn and they don't do that. And you have to look at some of the other signs on this list to determine if your no contact rule is working or not. And probably the most challenging part about the no contact rule is that it is possible to actually do a no contact rule, see none of these signs, and still have it be effective if your ex isn't exactly the most expressive, if they're not extroverted in how they're going to act. If they hold everything inside, if they're very introverted, you tend to be a little in the dark when you're going through this process, so keep that in mind. So let's move on to the second sign. What is the second sign to really determine if the no contact rule is working for you or not? Well, number 2 is you're spending more time on yourself and loving it. Like I said, when I was explaining the theory of reactance, I found that the no contact rule works best if you don't just rely fully on that theory of reactance idea where you're trying to get your ex to react to you. It also works perfectly in tandem if you're cultivating your life, improving the aspects of yourself that you really want to improve. Right? So if you're spending more time on yourself and actually enjoying that process, it's a great sign that you're using your time wisely. And I would actually raise my hand here and say this is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the most difficult thing for people to grasp. They do the no contact rule. They're not getting responses from their ex and they're freaking out. They're saying, Chris, the no contact rule isn't working. This is a waste of my time. And then I ask them, what are you doing with your time? Of course, they reply, nothing. I'm supposed to wait and he's or she's supposed to contact me, right? No, that's not how it works. How it works is you need to use your time valuably, right? Use it wisely. So spend time on yourself, and over time you'll find, at the beginning, I'm not going to lie, you're going to find, hey, this is kind of stupid. I don't want to do this. I just want my ex back. But over time, you might start to find that you start loving it. This is actually something we see in our Facebook group a lot, where people actually start spending time on themselves because guess what? We're forcing them to. And then by the end of the no contact rule, they don't want to end the no contact because guess what? They're enjoying the time they're spending on themselves so much. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Sign number 3 is they start paying attention to your social media profile more. Now, how would you know this? Right? Well, you can know this in many different ways. Let's just use the basic social media profile of Facebook. Let's say they like your pictures. You're posting pictures and they like your pictures. Let's say they comment on your Facebook profile on one of your pictures or on one of your status updates. Let's say you hear from a friend that your friend tells you that they tried to ask them how you're doing, right? They tried to ask them about your social media profile, assuming that they kind of wanted to stay in the dark a little bit. There's all sorts of ways that you can find out if the no contact rule is working through social media. And this brings up another really interesting point of using your time wisely. My clients, I teach them something called priming. You always want to be priming and cultivating the image that you want your ex to be perceiving. Because during the no contact rule, you are not allowed to talk to them. You're not allowed to text them. You're not allowed to respond to their text messages. Usually, there are some alterations that you can make there, but usually, no, you can't. You're just in a full blackout from them. But that doesn't mean you can't talk to them in an indirect way. That doesn't mean that you can't post things to basically create an image that's unattainable that they're going to want, right? Post pictures of you going out and doing things and having fun. So the more you do that and the more you see reactions to those images, likes, comments, even sometimes negative comments can be positive. As weird as it sounds, because guess what? They're thinking about you. They care enough about you to leave that negative comment. All right, so just keep that in mind. Let's move on to sign number 4, and that is other people start finding you attractive. This really works, in my opinion, in tandem with this sign right here that we just talked about. Let's say you're posting things on social media, creating that unattainable image, that image that every man or woman wants. But you don't attract your ex. You start attracting other people that you're friends with, and they start commenting and saying how sexy you look or how awesome you look or how jealous they are. Your ex sees that stuff. They get jealous themselves, or they start to realize they have competition, that you're not just going to sit around and wait around for them forever. Those things are important to do. And the crazy part about this is people will digest what I'm saying here. And I know, I've done this long enough to know that anyone who's listening to this, most of you guys will digest what I'm saying here, think, okay, that's a pretty cool idea, but not think it's that big of a deal. But in my opinion, it's more important to have accumulation of multiple different tactics within the overall strategy. That tends to get you better results than just focusing on one big part of the no contact rule, and that's just ignoring your ex. Doing all this other little stuff gets you those extra things. They get you, sometimes they're responsible for having your ex reach out to you. So don't just cut some of this stuff short because it seems insignificant. Having other people find you attractive, comment on your social media profile is important. Why? Because it creates competition. And competition creates urgency and also scarcity and also fear of loss, which are three primary motivations for making someone want to reach out to you. There's nothing that will cause someone to reach out to you and act if they feel like they're going to lose you forever, if they're having to face that reality. But you can only do that if other people start finding you attractive and start posting things on your social media profile. So do it. Let's move on to sign number 5, the last sign here, and that is your ex is more responsive after your no contact period. So what do I mean by this? Well, after your no contact period, I actually recommend that people reach out to their exes. They control the narrative. They dictate when the conversation is going to be had, what the conversation is going to be about, how the conversation is going to be ended. Sometimes the no contact rule will actually make your ex more responsive after your no contact period is up. After you've done all the things we've talked about, after you've seen all of the signs that we've talked about, you'll find your ex becoming more responsive. You'll reach out to them. They'll be responsive, and they won't just be responsive in a way where they're giving you some sort of neutral response where you say like, hey, guess what? And they say what? Instead, you get something like this. Hey, guess what? And they'll respond, oh my God, I'm so glad you contacted me. I was getting worried there for a minute. That's what you're looking for, right? Something positive like that. Something that can advance the conversation and show that they're more interested than just basically trying to play it cool. You want them to get emotional. Having them get emotional proves that they still have feelings for you on some level. So, keep that in mind as you're going forward.